All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Alchemy Podcast. I'm really excited for today's conversation. Someone who I look up to and also a dear friend. Welcome to the Alchemy Pod, Julian, my brother.
My friend, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this. This is a long time coming. I've wanted to have you on the pod for a long time. And ever since I left LA, we haven't really been in the same place for too long. So, we're here. Thanks to you. The reason I'm in Austin right now is we're going to Tame Impala tonight.
Thank you for joining me.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on the pod.
So we got to fire it up. I know. My buddy, one of my good buddies, Shane, shout out Shane Kofed, he went and saw Tame Impala in New York and he sent me some videos. So I got a little bit of a sneak peek and it's going to be a vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. Just about one of the best concerts I've ever been to. So Stoked you made it out. And
so one thing I am curious about is when we first met in 2021, when I first moved to LA, the Julian that I met was post men's work, post Burning Man, post kind of plant medicine, kind of post journey of exploration. And so the reality is I don't know Julian before all that. And so what I kind of know is I know you're a big time CrossFit competitor, but other than that, who is Julian kind of before the personal development men's work awakening?
Yeah. And that was a funny moment when we met too, just to kind of preface that, because I had friends who worked in door-to-door for over a decade and knew who you were.
Shout out Pessy.
Shout out Danny Pessy.
Shout out Danny Pessy, who was on this pod just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. I was just listening to that one earlier. You were invited by a mutual friend of ours and showed up on my front door. We were going to a concert. And you're like, "Hi, I'm Doug Cartwright." And I'm like, "Oh, I've been waiting 12 years to meet you." So it was just amazing. Like, funny moment. Yeah. A little bit of background. In my early 20s, became really impassioned with pursuing fitness and understanding how my body worked. I had always, felt awkward, felt out of place in my physical self growing up. And in my 20s, I got really into exercise, working out, nutrition. That led to, I was a CrossFit athlete in my 20s. And that was my introduction into coaching. And it originally came from a very selfish place of I was an athlete. I needed full-time access to a gym. So I got certified and started coaching CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting so that I could train all the time. And very quickly, that seemingly selfish pursuit turned into a realization that I actually was very passionate about helping people and got a lot of, there was a lot of fulfillment that came from the idea of being able to learn something, communicate, watch someone, how they performed or how they performed a movement, say a squat or a push-up, and being able to give them information that would have a positive impact in their movement and their life moving forward. So that was my introduction into coaching. Spent most of my 20s doing that. 2017 had my final competitive season as an athlete. And it was around that same time that I became more curious about mental performance and the spiritual aspect of things. I started to get into yoga. I started to get into meditation, started to experiment with plant medicine. And, after being a gym bro for 8 years, was shifting into wow, there's all these other things in life that are also so interesting and fulfilling.
Well, I think that builds a really strong foundation because I did CrossFit for a while, didn't come nowhere near where you're at, right? It was a fun kind of hobby to get in shape. And that requires a lot of mental strength and you have to go to some dark places. When you're in CrossFit was really cool, late 2010s and everyone was kind of doing the open and some of those workouts, you go to dark places, you got to just will yourself through some of these workouts. And so talk to us a little bit about the mental fortitude, the mental strength to go through that. And what was it like realizing that you're going to kind of wrap up your athletic performance? Was there frustration there? Was there disappointment? Or so kind of the combo of talk about how the mental piece of CrossFit helped you and then what was it like to transition out?
Yeah. So I will also add that if you know anything about competitive CrossFit, I'm 6'6", so I'm a foot taller than an elite level.
Who's the top guy? Froning?
I mean, at that time it was Rich Froning, who's he's 5'6" or 5'8" at most. So while I understood that, I was following this innate calling within me to do something that was doing good for my life and for my and I could tell that I was getting the side effects of pursuing something that's very physically grueling. There's a lot of benefit to that other than just being really good at working out. So through that, I was becoming a lot more mentally stable, a lot more mentally tough, a lot more just clear on having a clear goal that I was working towards day in and day out. And the mental fortitude and the commitment that forges is something that I knew was going to serve me through the rest of my life. The first spiritual experience of my life was doing burpees. I remember I was doing a grueling workout and doing, it was like an insane amount of burpees in this workout, which like you're basically laying down on the ground and then standing up and jumping as many times as you can. And I remember laying on the floor, just like in a pool of my own sweat. And I had this moment where I was in so much physical pain. And because of that, so much mental agony, because like you're saying, your demons come up when you're being pushed to your physical limit. And I remember it was the first time I had this moment of, I laid back and could see the sensations I was having in my body, the pain I was feeling in my body and my mind, and it was not me. I was like able to see that as if I was sitting back watching a movie of myself in that moment. It was like, wow, it was the first time that the statement, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my pain, I'm not my past, really resonated for me. It was a really poignant moment, and that was still pretty early in my journey. So I still had many years of grueling workouts and learning about myself to go through. But I always remember that being like, one of the first spiritual experiences I ever had was doing burpees of all things.
Yeah. And what was your response to that? Because I've had people who've had those moments and it like spooks them. And I've also I've talked to people who have like that moment, like where it's an out of body experience. You realize you're the awareness experiencing your thought, your body, your emotions, right? Was it a moment that kind of inspired you to keep going, or what did you make of it in the moment?
It was life-changing. Yeah, it was at a point in my life where I was, I was also training and doing CrossFit because it was the one thing keeping me sane. It was a grueling period of life and, learning, coming into young adulthood and learning how to be a man in this world. So that was empowering. It was like, oh wow, all of the things, it was the first time I experienced like all of the things that I've always thought myself to be aren't completely true. It's not absolute. There's more to this experience I'm having as a human than just the pain I experience. Or the obstacles I experience, which we need those things, but also it's easy to become overly identified with those.
Totally right. Yeah.
So yeah, that was a seed that continued to kind of sow over the years as an athlete. 2017, I had my last competitive season where I was training year round to compete in the CrossFit Open, and I had my best competitive season, and I'd moved states. I'd moved to Arizona. I'm from California. I'd moved to Arizona to work with a new coach, and my whole life had even more so had formed around this goal of I was trying to make it to the regional level of competition. Right before that final season, I had a really, really potent mushroom journey, and which was something I'd experienced prior, before that. But it was at this turning. There's these certain moments in life where things just converge. After that final competitive season, I had seen that there was more to life than just this one regiment that I'd been following, which had gotten me very far. And while I hadn't quite reached the end goal that I had set out for, I'd gotten so much more than I'd ever could have expected or seen when I started the journey. So when it ended, I had my last competitive season and decided to go on a different path from there. And it was one of relative ease and joy.
Yeah, I mean, I love that it was sparked by a mushroom experience too. And from my perspective, it's funny, our timelines line up pretty similar. Yeah. Now, my big June 10th moment happened in 2017, right? Then 2017 to 2022, really 2021, a lot of experimentation, plant medicine stuff. And now I've really cooled off on it. However, you have like those first initial experiences, and they're really good at, when you're in the experience, it's really intense, but really what it's doing is it's just giving you a new perspective. right? You just see the world from a different angle. You can take the rose-colored glasses off or the dark gray-colored glasses, whatever glasses you're wearing, and you just see a different perspective. And in my experience, like all of the really big aha moments for me were really simple. It wasn't like this groundbreaking whole new playbook of everything. It's just like, oh, I can see over the fence for a little bit. And I'm like, oh, there's just another way. And they're really, really simple insights, but really profound. And so I'm curious from your end, like what was the takeaway, the insights, like what was the perspective shift that you had that caused you to kind of take a different path?
I mean, from that moment that I spoke about of, first like laying on the ground in agony doing burpees, like all the way to having moments out in nature in altered states or with plants, or also just deepening my meditation practice. It was a gradual realization that there's a much more profound experience that we are having, that I was having as a human, beyond just what I did.
Yeah.
And how I labeled myself or how other people interact with me. And I just became very curious. And I know it sounds like super abstract to
super
say.
Meta.
It sounds super meta, but we are like every spiritual leader or guru has said this to some extent, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And I began for the first time in my life to become aware of that dimension of myself. And so at that point it was just like, okay, I've been in this regimented world of doing and being goal oriented and like training for a specific single goal all the time. And it shifted into, I'm going to go learn about myself.
Yeah, kind of get outside the box. One thing that they've done for me too is it feels like you're in a box your whole life and you don't realize you can get, or the analogy that Ram Dass uses a lot is like when you're a fish in water, you don't know what water is, right? Because you're in the water all the time, It's like that story is like when the two fishes are swimming through and the older fish to the younger fish is like, how's the water today, fellas? And the other fish is like, what's water? Because that's all you know. And then you have that moment where you can kind of get your head above water and just see a different perspective. And yeah, it seems like it was really transformational for you on your journey. And so I know you went and did like a very similar to me. I know you moved to Bali, you did the yoga retreat, right? You did your yoga certification. One thing that I really admire you for that I haven't mustered up the courage to go do yet is also done like these multiple days silent meditations, right? So talk to us a little bit about those exploration days. What did you do? I know you went to Bali, you had the meditation retreat. What were those days like, and what were some of the insights taken away from your big experiences?
So, to preface this part, I had been a coach in the physical realm. People came to me to get more in shape, work on their nutrition, and I still felt a deep level of fulfillment from helping people. And I was at this transition point, I was realizing there was more to me to bring to the world and to help people with than just helping people get in shape. So that was what had pulled me forward through this transition. Yeah, I lived in Bali for a bit in 2018 and got introduced to started practicing traditional Hatha yoga. And
so I don't even know what Hatha yoga is. What's the difference between, what are the different types? I know.
Yeah, so Hatha yoga, from how I understand it, is considered one of the original lineages of yoga. It's like at least there's a traceable lineage back through India, at least 3,500 years, if not more. They say that this is, people in that lineage, of course, say that this was the type of yoga that there's theories that like Jesus was practicing this when he went out. So it's a traditional form of yoga that is based around using asana, which is the movement yoga that we call in the West is actually like we label yoga in the West as we call it yoga, and what it actually is there's 8 limbs of yoga, and that one limb that we're doing most of the time, which is the movement based portion, is asana. So in a traditional form of yoga, you're using asana, which is the movement, to center and direct energies in the body to bring the body into alignment. When the body is in alignment with itself, then you use meditation, or you use breath, pranayama, which is another leg of yoga. You use the breath to bring the mind into alignment with the body. When the mind and the body are in alignment with one another, you use kriya, meditation, which brings the spirit into alignment. And the idea is that you're using this as a system to actually ascend in consciousness. So this isn't just like a thing that looks dope on Instagram or what. This is an ancient science that's considered by the people that practice it, that was used by enlightened beings for millennia to reach higher levels of consciousness and enlightenment. So that was what I began to get introduced to.
Mind, body, soul connection, mind, body, soul, spirit, like alignment. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that was a super deep dive on that, but that is genuinely like what the tradition of yoga is based in. So that was something that I really dove into. I lived in Bali for just a few months in the beginning of 2018, and that practice that I got there, I continued for 3 years. I was practicing daily. And it changed my life more than, I would say that has been a more like really having a committed yoga practice has been the most transformational, consistently transformational and supportive practice out of anything that I've done.
Yeah. So on that, I mean, again, it's so crazy as I sit down with you here, just how similar our paths are. Because after kind of my aha moment, that awakening moment, I had an out of body experience when I was doing breath work, meditation in Costa Rica before I had done any plant medicine stuff, and kind of saw my body separate from myself. Then that took me into a medicine journey. And then I got really deep into yoga, and not nearly to the extent that you went to, but there's shout out Core Power Yoga in Utah, hot yoga. And I'm like, and I was doing CrossFit right before too. Again, not to your level, but that my time on my yoga mat, even though it was like basic white girl yoga, the hot yoga, and I'm dripping sweat, but I had a lot of powerful moments of just like really, it was the first time I really felt like I was in my body and not in my head. Coming from Vivint as a sales guy, I was always constantly in this mode of grind, hustle. How do I solve the problem? How do I recruit more people? How do I make more money? And I'll never forget when my first yoga class ever, it was like 3 other people in the class, low lights. My first yoga class ever. Oh my gosh, this is funny. The first restorative yoga class I ever went to. I went to one yoga class first with my CrossFit coach, Ali. She took me because she said it'd be good for your body in lifts because you'd have more mobility. And I remember my first time in Shavasana, I laid down after the yoga class, and I remember my mind stopped. And I remember laying on the yoga mat at my first yoga class thinking, like, whoa, this is the first time in 15 years that my mind was quiet. Like the chatter got really, really quiet. And I remember like, what is this place? Because being a sales bro at Vivint, I was just like grind, hustle, work harder, make more money. And then I had that moment of like, whoa, peace. And so I remember feeling really drawn to yoga. Like I gotta come back here. I gotta keep going. And then this is actually a funny story. This is amazing. So I go back to yoga. So I'm like, I gotta keep going. So the yoga I went to, shout out Excel Fitness in Holiday, Utah. It's a big gym. And then within the gym, there's like little rooms, and there's a yoga room and there's a spin room or whatever. It wasn't a main yoga center. And so I signed up for a restorative class, my first restorative class. I think it's my second class ever. I'm the only one who signs up. And so I go into this yoga class, and there's this like really cute instructor, and it's just me and her. And I'm really new. I'm feeling a little uneasy, and it's a restorative class. So the lights are low. She has candles on. And I didn't know that like hands-on assistance was a thing. Like, I didn't know that, like, sometimes the yoga instructors will come up and like push you and get into the hold a little deeper. I didn't know that was a thing. And so I was feeling kind of some flirty energy with this girl, and it's just me and her. And I'm in pigeon. And then she comes up behind me and puts her hands on my shoulders. And for like a brief moment, I'm like, is my yoga instructor trying to hook up with me in the middle of class? So it was one of those moments like, what is going on? Diffused it really quickly. But yeah, getting into yoga for me, it really softened my body. And then, I'm envious that you're able to take that to a deeper level. And you mentioned that it's the most powerful, impactful thing you've done. And one thing I really admire about you too, I mean, we've traveled and we've done trainings together, and we've stayed in the same hotels. And, I remember we were out in Orlando doing stuff for Miguel and Sunbright, and, you've got your little map before bed and you have your little routine, and it's something I really admire. So say more about the impact that your yoga routine has had on
what you experienced was we were doing a training in Florida, and we'd been traveling all day, and we got to the hotel, and like, it's like 1 a.m. or something. And we've got like 4 or 5 hours to sleep before we wake up. And what I know is that it doesn't matter. I will have a better day and I will sleep better if I take a moment of pause. To the point you were speaking of, in our society, we are all a part of this, where we we all live in some degree of grind mode. I need to accomplish more. I need to earn more. I need to amass more. And we are many times, where most of us are not taught from childhood, or we forget how important it is to pause and to reset and to reflect. And so that routine that you heard me doing in the dark is it's a simple stretch and breath and meditation that I do, and I have a version of it that can vary from 5 to 40 minutes depending on how much time I have, but it is a staple of my best days, without a doubt, begin and always end with a moment of pause. And even my most challenging days are a little bit more bearable when I take that moment to take a step back and get out of my head and remember that I'm not all of the things that I'm doing. We are all human beings. And that is a tenet that I bring into how I work with my clients, is that, like, what we're talking about is, like, I work with a lot of guys. I work with a number of guys in door-to-door, as well as other entrepreneurs and people in business. And that is the illusion that we many times get caught up in, that I need to do more, I need to amass more, I need to accomplish more, which, yeah, great. Let's play that game. Let's not forget that we're human beings, and let's do what we need to do to remind ourselves of that.
Yeah. And what you're talking about, it's so powerful, because when I like would hear this of like slowing down, it felt like the intention of this was to alleviate stress. It's just like, okay, we're just going to slow down, not be so stressed. And it's almost like the benefit was getting relief. However, there's an additional benefit from all this, is that when we're able to take a pause and slow it down, it allows us, and I'm talking about this in my next book, we're usually stuck in what's called front layer of mind. And front layer of mind is, I'm slightly anxious, I'm slightly worried. How do I get more money? How do I get the girl? How do I alleviate this discomfort? And we're kind of in this front layer of mind of just like, solve the problem. And what you're talking about is when you get a moment to pause, relax, reset, you fall, and I think breath work does this really fast. It moves us into what I call second layer of mind. And when you're in second layer of mind, or in other words, the intuitive layer of mind, it's connecting to that source. So you can gather wisdom, you can get new perspectives, you can get more insight. So I just want to make it very clear, and I'd love to have you speak on this too, that yes, you get relief from stress and anxiety in a moment to relax, but you also get the benefit of connecting to higher power source to receive insights, wisdom, and guidance as you navigate your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So how I organize what you just said is that our mind is a machine. It is a very, very powerful tool that has evolved with us over hundreds of thousands of years. We many times mistake the machine or the car for the driver.
Great analogy.
So myself, my inner self, the part of me that is universal, that is a part of all that is of existence, life force that is moving through my body, that is moving through your body, that is self. When we take a moment to slow down, take a step back, get out of the mind, we open up the space for self, or universal consciousness, or God, or spirit, however you want to call it, to flow through. And many times when we're going about our day-to-day lives, problem solving, earning, amassing, we mistake the mind, the problem solver, the machine, for self. So that's how I organize what you just said.
I love that analogy. Yeah. It's so good, right? It's just, you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, you're not your body, you're the experiencer experiencing the experience. And when you're able to kind of reconnect with that part of yourself, that's when I feel like, they call that flow state, when you're just in rhythm with the natural unfolding of life. And I know we both have had moments in our life where life has unfolded in a way that we could have never possibly predicted, that it takes us on a higher path for our highest and best self. And like, I even think about the way we connected. Like, you're one of my freaking brothers, one of my best friends. And the way we met, like, we're going back to the story at the very beginning, is my book had just come out, and some random person asked me to be on a podcast, and I don't remember who it was, and I was on their podcast, and then Kenny Borg DM'd me.
Shout out Kenny Borg.
Shout out Kenny. Love Kenny. all time. I got to get Kenny in the sea here one of these days. He DMs me out of the blue and says, "Hey man, I just listened to a podcast you were on, really loved your insights." So I click on Kenny's profile. We have a couple of mutual friends and I see that he lives in LA. I would happen to be just moving to LA. So I DM him back and I'm like, "Hey, I'm looking for new friends. Let's meet for coffee." I'm like, "I'm free right now." He's like, "Meet me at Rose." So I go to Rose establishment in Venice, have coffee with Kenny. We connect over Rufus du Sol. Their new album had just come out. I was moving to LA full time. I was there visiting, but was moving there full time maybe 2 or 3 weeks later. And I'm like, "Hey, I move here on Monday and then the Rufus show's on Friday." And he's like, "Come meet me with all of our friends that come to the show with us." I'm like, "Amazing. Just moving to LA and now I have a new friend." And then go meet up with Kenny. And that was the night I met you. And then I eventually moved into those little condos.
Yeah,
so
we were neighbors for 2 years. Yeah.
2 years. And that's that's where our friendship really grew. And it's just like, it's crazy how there's no way you could ever plan that, right? It's so absurd, so synchronistic. The timing of it, I just happened to be in LA before moving there. It's just, and look at it now. And so when you're able to tap into that other layer of mind where you realize you're not the vehicle, not the car, you're the one to experience it, life just unfolds really naturally for you.
Yeah. It feels we are many times tricked into the idea that to that point of like, I am the driver, not the car. As analytical beings, we like to plan. Most of us like to have a plan. We like to know what's going to happen. We like to know where it's going. Having plan, having goals, having vision is important. It's as important to be able to surrender to the moment. And it's a life is a dance between the two.
Yeah. And I like the one thing I would add to that too, that's been helpful for me is it is important to have a goal and a destination. So I'm at point A, I want to get to point B. Where the magic is surrendering the path to get there, right? You think it's going to be a straight line, but no, you're going to have to go left and right and drive at night and in the dark and in the terrain and in the snow and just surrender to the way you get there. And in my experience, along the way, the journey, you get new views and new insights and pick up new people along the way that you could have never predicted. So I think it's important to have a goal to give you a sense of direction, get you moving. And, and to what you beautifully said, just like we can't predict exactly how it unfolds. On that note, no, you're a new resident of Austin, Texas, right? We did real quick. I do want to touch on this. I wasn't planning on talking this, but like we had summer 2022 was like magical, right? We all lived on the same street, Grandview Ave. Shout out Grandview. And you were there and we had the whole clan. It was like this magical moment of we were friends with all of our neighbors. And for me, it was one of the most special times of our life because we were all hanging out. We're in the same community. We've all kind of dispersed and gone our own different ways now. But talk to us about the power of like community and having the right friends and the right group and how to make new friends and how to find community when you're in that version of yourself that's, I know we both can relate to having outgrown different parts of our lives, friend groups at different times as we've evolved, and not in a we're better than, but just different interests and different alignment. And so we all came together that summer of 2022. And so talk to what it's the importance of having a good community and how to find a good community.
Yeah, that was
magical.
That was a magical little window of time that we were all in Venice, and I think we kind of we've all dispersed. We all kind of hit our limit. we were at our limit living there, and like it's cool to see these moments where there's like potent community and people coming together, and then the journeys that everyone goes on from there. Like seeing what you've done moving back to Utah and what you're doing with Alchemy and all of your work. And I am fortunate to have really couple groups of really amazing friends and community. And I think the seed of that has come from, I've always done my best, with this, starting with, me following my intuition to be an athlete and go down the coaching route, which was unconventional. I've always followed what my internal compass is calling me to do. Again, what we were just talking about of, it's great to have plan and have vision. And I've always done my best to surrender to what life is presenting me without needing to know what the end result is. I moved, I'm from Los Angeles, and in 2016, I moved to Arizona to follow my competitive career, but also I didn't have the word for it at the time, but I was seeking community. I was seeking a group of aligned individuals that I could go through the next era of my life together. And when I moved to Arizona, I, amassed a group of brotherhood and soul tribe, and through a shared curiosity of all the things we've been talking about: meditation, personal development, spirituality,
music,
plant medicine, etc. That all the broad strokes I just threw out there are to say I focus on being the best version of myself, putting myself in situations that force me to grow and to be called forth into higher states of being, higher levels of performance. And the people that are supposed to be around me, that I am supposed to attract and that I'm supposed to be attracted to, that happens naturally. I don't know if that's how it goes for everyone, but I have always followed my heart, and the people that I need to be with have always shown up as a result of that.
Yeah, and distinguish the difference between, now this is such a hard question, but like between ego and inspiration, right? Like it's really hard, right? And so because I look back at my life and, I got the ping, I'll never forget. I was in Utah when I was still living in Venice. This was 2 years ago. I was living in Utah. I was in Utah for a football game. I woke up one morning at my hotel downtown right before the Utah-Florida game. Utah beat that ass, right? And I opened up the curtain and I felt like this ping in my gut. I'm like, oh, I need to move home. And I'm like, my mind goes, hell no. Like loving Venice, right? Amazing people, great friends, great food, great weather, great music, all the shows. Like there's no way I'm moving back. And for a year, it just kept coming up again and again and again and again and again, to the point I had to finally surrender to it. And I would say leaving LA for me was the hardest decision I ever made, because my ego was loving living in Venice. I was having a fun time. And so I'm curious from your perspective, right? Because you obviously got the ping to leave LA, and you did. How does one distinguish between, oh, this is a good idea that I think would be beneficial, versus like, oh, this is a calling, an intuitive nudge from God? I'm curious your insights on that.
I know it in my body, and like trying to verbalize it is a different thing. I mean, usually just to like piggyback off the anecdote you just shared, you got that ping, and it was deep down you had a sense to do something that you didn't really want to do.
Not at all.
That's usually a pretty strong indicator. It's not always the thing. Our sense is also built to keep us safe, to keep us out of harm's way. And I think it's sometimes easy to mistake, like when sometimes people get an intuitive hit for a change to make in their life, and our protective mechanism kicks in and says, don't do that, because unconsciously it's like doesn't feel safe. That many times is the very thing you need to do. For my example, like I've lived in Los Angeles most of my life, and recently I've in the last couple of years, went through a big life transition. And last year, on paper, everything in my life was great, and internally everything felt off. And I kept telling myself, like, what? Everything's good, bro. Like you got friends, you got community, you've got an amazing life here, you've got, and inside a lot of things felt off. And I finally came to terms with being real with myself. And I really think, like, with people that I work with too, like when we have these questions in life, most of the time we know what we're supposed to be doing. We're just not admitting it to ourselves, because it's easier to stay in a situation that feels comfortable, that feels familiar. And it takes practice, and it takes being okay. And you need to be okay making mistakes. You need to be okay following that intuitive hit of, this feels really uncomfortable, but I need to move to Utah, even though everything in my mind is telling me not to do this, because it feels uncomfortable. Following that, and many times we veer away from doing the thing that feels uncomfortable because we are afraid of failing. And that is the only way you grow, is by trying new things. If you want things to be different in your life or in your career, you have to physically be in different spaces. You have to physically be trying different things and making different behaviors, or you will stay in the same patterns. So the fear, the obstacle is the way, right? Like that is that being able to see that feeling and have the courage to follow it. There isn't an easy playbook to all these things, right? It's not linear, but that is how that's my answer
Yeah,
to your question. That's how I
you
figured
talked
that out.
about like being honest with yourself, right? There's something you know you need to do and you're not doing it, right? But what are some questions someone could ask themselves to almost have like kind of come to Jesus with themselves, like a moment of like integrity? Like what are some questions people could ponder just to see where they might be out of an integrity with themselves? As you think of that one, I've got,
Yeah.
it's a deep question. And one question I ask myself on that, and it's very cliche, is if I could talk to my highest and best self, right? The version of me that's in the best shape, that's financially independent and secure, that's happy, service oriented, right? If I can like tune in and visualize this version of myself who is like truly been the highest and best version of myself, physically, mentally, emotionally, a great friend, great partner, right? Connected to God. And I have this moment, if I could like connect to him, what advice would he give me? What would he want me to do? Like almost like a conversation. And in those moments, it's like, okay, yeah, he would say, yeah, go home, be closer to family, go back to Utah,
So that's a great framework. I just responded to your question with silence. And what I'm realizing is in those moments, coming back to what I was sharing earlier, the body like a lot of the work that I do is about teaching people how to get out of the mind and slow down, taking that moment of pause. Because when we can get out of the mind and we can slow things down, with the inner wisdom that we all carry and hold emerges. So when I have a question of a life decision, or things are off or not going the way that things are tough, I have a question of like, where am I out of alignment in my life right now, or where am I out of integrity? It's not a place I go thinking, it's a place I go feeling. So that I'm just like tuning into that now as in this moment as we're having this discussion. And that's why self-reflection, stillness, mindfulness is such an important part of anyone who's growth oriented. When I have questions, when I have big life decisions, I journal, I meditate, I get out of my regular environment into nature, I get into stillness, and I listen. And when I really, it takes effort to do this because we live in very stimulating, noisy world for the most part. So when things are off or change is needed and I'm not sure what the next step is, that's not a time for me to think. That's a time for me to feel.
I want you to talk about real quick, because one thing on this track that I really admire about you is that you have this ritual where you turn your phone off on Sundays, right? And I know there's times when we were neighbors and I'm like, Julian, come watch football with me. And then the text goes green. I'm like, oh, his phone's off. Like, trying to hang out, trying to go to Erewhon or something. I'm just like, Julian's just off the map, right? So talk to us a little bit about why you implemented that routine and the benefits of just getting off your phone for a day.
And it's an augmented version of creating stillness and space for myself. I was in especially when I was living in LA, it was just like a very busy time in my life. And I was beginning to dance on the edge of burnout. Many times I was dancing past that. And I just saw my relationship with my phone and technology, just like, it's just an upward spiral that does not let up. It started with protecting my mornings. We both have had like extensive morning routines. And so like, the first hour of my day was no phone. I would wake up, do my thing, breath work, meditation, cold plunge, journal, whatever variation of it was. And I didn't have my phone on for an hour or 30 minutes, depending on when I had calls starting. And I just like, there's such a clear change in my energy. And like first thing I'm waking up, how I feel. And then, middle of the day, once I've been on my phone and doing screens. So there was a Sunday where I was like, I'm going to not turn my phone on today and see what happens. And this is a thing that like, if I see people talking about this on social media and YouTube now, like dopamine detox, dopamine resets. It's a thing. So yeah, when I wake up on Sunday, like, I set it up so that people are like, well, what if someone needs to contact you? I mean, there's loopholes. There's things you can do to, if there's an emergency, or you can set the system up so that it's supportive to you. But what I would do is just, whatever needed to be done, I would do it Saturday night. Yeah, Sunday, like, phone is off Saturday night, and I hide it somewhere in the house. And like, Sunday I would just keep the phone off. And the amount of, I mean, there were Sundays where I would read an entire book. It's like I couldn't read a quarter of a book on a weekday when I'm too distracted.
If your phone's in
I'm reading, I'm
distance.
jumping back and forth. I mean, there were weekends where I tore through an entire book, or wrote continuously for hours on end, which, like, I just, like, did things that I just had, like, extreme focus and presence, and also, like, just felt very calm. And come around Monday, I would be so relaxed. My focus was much higher. My dopamine would be reset. I was, like, in a peak state going into the week. And I know I've spoken about this too with, like, Alchemy members before, and, like, on your community calls. And for some people, like, doing it, it might seem super extreme. And my recommendation is, like, start with the morning. Like, start with, like, when you want to create a new habit or a new behavior in life, like, you're always going to see the person online who has, like, the most extreme version of it. Like, break that down to, like, 20% or 10% and start there. So, like, if you have trouble never being able to get off your phone, like, just commit to 30 minutes in the morning, 2 days a week. Just try and see, just notice how you feel. Just start with that, and you can build on the blocks from there.
Yeah. I mean, it's an absolute game changer, just the relationship with the phone. One thing I've had phases where I'm, like, really into my phone, and then I'm really good at pulling back, and I've got a really good relationship with it right now. And it's so simple, but the two biggest ones for me are postpone phone viewer in the morning. Don't look at it first thing. So I don't sleep with my phone in my room. And then at night, getting your phone, charging it in your office and not having it before bed has been absolute game changer on that. Now, you mentioned that you share this with a lot of Alchemy guys. You coach within the Alchemy community. A lot of the Alchemy members have taken one-on-ones with you, and I know they get so much out of it. I'm curious, from your perspective, how has being coached, right? You hiring coaches, how has that influenced your life, and who are some of the coaches who have made the biggest impact on your life?
This has been a social media post I've been meaning to make for years, of just acknowledging and thanking the superstar Avenger squad of coaches I've had the honor to work with that have impacted me. How I look at coaching for myself and for the clients I work with. People I work with don't need a coach. I don't need a coach. I choose to have one, because having somebody in my corner is going to help me get where I'm wanting to go, or how I'm wanting to be, more efficiently. That idea, that super abstract anecdote I threw out a few minutes ago of when I'm at a place of transition or needing to figure things out, I don't think, I feel. I know that for a lot of people listening to this, that's going to sound kind of woo.
Yeah.
That is a tangible, what I just said, there's a tangible practice. That is a tangible skill that you can develop that I got from working with coaches. Shout out Stefan Grafstein. So it is about, like, working with a coach, and the people that I work with recognize that. And I tell this to my clients, every client that I work with, my goal is for them to not need a coach. At least not to be dependent, not to be in a place of believing that you have to have someone all the time. Like, everything that we are going to accomplish and learn in our coaching work together is stuff that has always been within you. I can't give you anything that you don't already have, and there's nothing that can be taken from you. That is how I begin all of my coaching containers. Simply, we are here because we recognize that by having these conversations, by enrolling in this type of work, we're going to get there more efficiently. We're going to save energy, and hopefully, learn some skills along the way that help us do the things that we've been talking about here.
Yeah. And one thing I'd ask too is, I know you've worked, with a lot of guys in the Alchemy community, and I love that, you come in to support. What would someone expect by hiring you as a coach? What do you think you can really help people navigate in their life?
A lot of the guys that I've worked with come to me when they're at many times there's a transition point taking place in their life, either in their personal life or usually everything works together. So it's usually people think that they have a question in their professional life and it's reflective of something going on in their personal life. I help people get clear on what the next phase of their life looks like many times. And then we set the roadmap to get there, and we work on many times when we're going for a new pursuit or higher goals, our patterns, our limiting beliefs, our fears, the ways in which we've historically always gotten in our own way show up. When those things come up, we work on reprogramming, rewriting those stories, those beliefs about ourselves.
Yeah, I know that's a really big process, is rewiring beliefs. And it's one of those things that you hear a lot and you're like, yeah, whatever, and then you actually go in and be intentional about doing that work. And there's always a story running, at least for me too. I still have stories in my head about who I am as a romantic partner or an entrepreneur, right? How can someone really find or assess, because a lot of times these stories are really unconscious. Like they've been programmed and rooted since we were a little kid, right? We don't even know we're running that program or that story. It's making a huge impact on our life and we have no idea. And we're just like, why do these same things keep happening? I keep falling into the same pattern in romance or health or finances. So what is something someone can do to heighten their awareness around a potential unhealthy self-limiting belief or story they're telling themselves? How can you actually find out what that thing is?
Yeah, it's tough because when the story, to that point I was talking about earlier of having that moment where I sat back and saw myself and I was like, oh wow, I'm not my pain, I'm not my thoughts. Up until that point, that identity is it's the veil that we live in. The whole thing. Right. When I'm working with someone and they come up against, an obstacle or a sticking point, many times that the pain that they're experiencing, life, the obstacles we experience in life are just objective. They're just things that happen. The stories and the meaning that we apply to them is because of the experiences, the way that we've been conditioned to see the world. So when someone, I have sales guys that they're like, yeah, I if I knock on a door and freeze, go knock doors and all this, I'm in flow, I'm good, having a good day. And then all of a sudden I just freeze and I get nervous and I start tripping over, and then there's a whole pattern that comes in of I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm going to fail, I'm not, it all comes back to basically I'm not good enough. And because of that, I'm not safe in this world. That's usually some variation of that. First, we have to just recognize that's what's going on and go okay, let's have awareness of that. That is the story that's running underneath the surface there. Let's have that awareness and let's begin to detach the idea or the belief that because this is happening, I'm not good enough, or I'm right there. There's usually a shame spiral, or it's usually a shame spiral that comes from those types of moments. So it's tough work. It's hard to get awareness just going off on your own, and over time going through those. If you have that experience enough times on your own, you eventually will have awareness of it. That's why we work with a coach, just so we can shorten the amount of time, right? You can go through it once or twice and have that reflected to you rather than having to do it 100 times to go through it. Journaling has been a very powerful tool for me for self-reflection outside of, working with a coach. If someone were to use that.
Yeah. And I think journaling is really helpful too, as if we're trying to assess or find out what our self-limiting belief is to do a journal assessment, right? If you've done a really good job of your journals, keeping up, I probably journal, check in twice a week, right? Nothing crazy. It's not this big extensive process, but I do about 1 page every 3-4 days. And what's really helpful to me is once or twice a year, I'll read all of my journal entries from the last year and I'll start to pick up patterns. And I'm like, oh, I've been in this situation before with this romantic situation. Oh, it's the same thing that's happening. For me in the last year, the biggest breakthroughs I've had have just been in dating. Of just oh, I'm doing the same thing. I meet someone, moves too fast, in head over heels, it blows up, right? And I'm like, why is this happening, And so doing that self-reflective has really changed my dating relationship and whatnot. And now I'm seeing someone now. I did the complete opposite of what I normally do. moved really, really slow, right? We didn't kiss till our 7th date, 2 months in. And now I've got like this really great connection with this woman right now, and it's going amazing. And it's like, oh, it's because I had to take that time to really assess and look at my patterns, right? And it reminds me, someone, there was an Instagram thing where it says, in regards to dating, it's like, oh, you don't have a type, you have a pattern. And I'm like, yeah, and these patterns are rooted in, subconscious beliefs of unworthiness and I'm not enough. And when you can really get into those subconscious beliefs and change them, gives you a whole new perspective on life. So I just know, in regards to a lot of the guys in Alchemy that have done one-on-ones with you, they all come back saying the same thing of just like your ability to kind of help show people where they're not free has been really rewarding for a lot of people. So it's been a pleasure having you in the Alchemy fan, brother.
Yeah, thank you. The other, just to kind of touch on this, something that I've really enjoyed working with a lot of my clients and door to door and my Alchemy guys is communication skills, especially in an industry that is built on communication, whether you're on the doors or with your recruits or with your managers, anyone in your company. And in your personal relationships, so much we spend so much energy and time navigating miscommunicated moments and situations. And that's something that's been really fulfilling for me, is just working with guys on creating more awareness about how they communicate with their partners and within their professional spaces, and cleaning that up and just like saving energy. It's like over a long enough timeline, you will, over your life, you will hopefully, if you're growth oriented, you will get better at all the things we've been talking about on your own. It's just a lot more efficient to have someone in your corner helping you do it. And like, that's why, you and I both invest heavily in having coaches. I
have 4 coaches.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's also been something that's been really fun working with all the guys on.
Yeah. Well, brother, I wish we could go longer here. I'm sure we'll have to do another round here. We've got a lot more we didn't touch on that I wanted to. But if someone is, looking for help on communication help, looking for help on self-limiting beliefs, right? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, find me on socials. You can reach out. I got Instagram, so at Julian with an A, Julian GB. Shoot me a DM and we can go from there.
Yeah, and Julian is also an Alchemy coach, so you have access to him for those who want to be part of the Alchemy community. So thanks for coming on, brother. I know we'll do this again. Got a lot of love for you, man.
Yeah, this was a blast, man. Thank you for having me.
Big love.